Hello everyone, I'm so glad you could be here. Thank you for joining me. I'm Lady Rose of Goddess Garage and I hope your day is going well. I'm here today because I wanted to do a video as I had promised in my live Mystic Monday shows, which I do live now from YouTube at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So if you'd like to join me for any of those videos, I would love to have you in the audience, so to speak. But I'm doing this because we were talking about new moon intentions, because there's a new moon that's coming up at the end of this week. And you can do this calling in of directions, this casting of a circle, anytime you want to do any kind of spirituality work, tripped on that word, or meditation, or rituals, or spell casting, or praying, even anything that you want to do. And a lot of this directional calling in the direction, casting a circle kind of thing cuts across a lot of different religions and spirituality. It's not just witchcraft, Wicca, pagan kind of thing. It's very much incorporated in shamanism as well. It's also even incorporated in the Catholic Church, because as I was raised a Catholic, I know that when we say our prayers, we always start out by crossing ourselves, and we say, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Amen. And I know a lot of people will say that's supposed to represent the crucifix that Jesus was crucified on, and yes, it does have that meaning. But if you actually look back in older forms of the church and the history of the church, that a lot of priests and altar boys wore their robes, of course, when they were on the altar, and a lot of the crosses were equal crosses, not crucifix crosses. And the equal crosses represent the four directions. And the four directions are represented by many different things, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But let's talk about why. Why do we call in the directions? Well, the reason we call in the directions are for a couple of different things. One, each direction represents a doorway or a gateway in which things can come and go. And when we call in those directions, when we honor those directions, what we're doing is we're setting protection and we're setting intention of what we want to come through those doorways. So when we call in the directions, we're honoring them, we're setting protection, and we're setting our intention for what we want to come in. Because we don't want something coming in that we haven't set the intention for, or that could, interfere with us or even harm us and that sort of thing. Not that there's things floating out there wanting to harm us, but I mean there are, but it's not like they're sitting there going, yeah, I want to get you or anything. But this is why we do that. So I'm going to get into that a little bit more. So when we cast a circle, because that's what we're doing, it's a big paradox, right? We're casting a circle with four corners. And how does a circle have four corners? That's one of the mystical paradoxes. So there are guardians of each of the watchtowers, as they are often called, for the four directions. The four directions, of course, being east, south, west, and north. And it's very different as to different traditions, as to how they call them in. A lot of traditions will start in the east, because that's considered the first door. That's where the sun rises, so that's the first door. Some people or some faiths or paths will start in the north, because north is like true north kind of thing. But also within any of these paths, sometimes it depends on the ritual, spell, meditation, prayer you're doing. You can also start in the south. Very rarely, I don't think I've ever been part of any kind of ritual that started in the west. I've been in rituals and whatnot that have started in all the other three directions, but never in the west. So it's kind of interesting. And most of the time they go clockwise, or docile, as it's called. Widdershins is the counterclockwise. And it's interesting because most shamanic practices do clockwise as well. However, the Mohawks, which I am, go counterclockwise. So if you ever go to a Mohawk powwow, you'll notice the Mohawks are going counterclockwise. And it's interesting because I've followed a lot of spirituality paths. I've followed witchcraft, Wicca, hoodoo, shamanic paths and everything like that. And I always wondered why my natural instinct, because I always had to correct myself, was to go counterclockwise. But when that was explained to me quite a few years ago, I'm like, oh, that makes sense why I want to go Widdershins and counterclockwise, because my people do that. So kind of interesting, because sometimes people say, oh, Widdershins is about getting rid of things, or it's about casting negative stuff. No, it's just a different energy, that's all. So I wanted to talk about each of the directions. Like I said, there's east, south, west, and north. And the 4 directions are also in the medicine wheel that the Native Americans follow their shamanic paths with. But there's lots of different colors, crystals, beings that are part of the directions. So in a traditional sort of Wicca pagan way, a lot of directions are called in by their direction, like the guardians of the watchtowers of the east, keepers of the sacred winds. That's a thing that's often said. That's a go-to thing. There can be very long soliloquies for each direction and then center as well. And it doesn't have to be that hard. It can be very, very simple. So when you're doing your new moon intentions, I always encourage you to call in the directions. So why would we do this? One, like I said, it sets up a protection for you as well. It's always better to be safe than sorry, right? But also too, what you're doing is you're calling and honoring these directions, but you're calling them to bear witness to what you are setting. So when you have someone that's bearing witness to an intention you're setting, it helps to create an energy where it comes in faster. It also creates an energy where you're accountable for it, because it's not just a matter of wishing it and then sitting back and going, when's it coming? It's about taking that inspired action afterwards and taking those steps forward, even if they scare us, to get to that goal. And we're being held accountable from the directions. We're also asking them to witness it. And it's good to have someone that is just there witnessing what you're doing, so that it just creates a stronger energy. And by witnessing it, they can also help us with it. It's kind of like calling angels in. And I've always said, angels cannot help you until you ask them for help. And by calling in the directions, what you're doing is you're setting up the energy of asking for help with this intention. Now, I do say when you're setting a new moon intention, it's always good to just go with one. And I know a lot of people have laundry lists of things that they want to have come into their life. Know that everything comes in when it's supposed to, and work on one intention, one goal, one wish, one dream, one desire at a time. We have 13 new moons every year, so that's 13 new things you can set an intention for. So keep that in mind. Know that, well, this month I'm going to work on this. And it's actually not by month, because like I said, we have 13 moons, but generally speaking, it's about a month in between. So you have 13 moons to spend setting those intentions every year. And then you can either repeat them the next year, because not everything's done in a one-shot kind of way. There's many levels to a lot of things. So know that this is a pace that's good for you to bring in this growing kind of energy, or bringing those desires to you. Now, for the directions. So there's crystals that you can use. So for east, yellow jasper is a very common, very useful crystal if you're into crystals. So this is something, and you can even have them by you on a table or something, and you can put them on a table with the yellow jasper in the east, and south, west, and north crystals, which I'm going to talk about here. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to set a whole, like, you don't have to sprinkle salt and light candles and things like that. You can light a candle and then have your crystals there, and and set those intentions. And you'll find your magic and your intentions, your meditations, your prayers are much stronger when you do it this way. So, like I said, for crystals in the East, yellow jasper is often a good crystal for that. In the South, red jasper is a great crystal, or any yellow or red crystal. And a lot of times, like, I'm not very strong in crystals as far as knowing about crystals. I know when I first started teaching Wicca and witchcraft and stuff like that, I was often asked for a crystal class and I often avoided it because I didn't know crystals very well. But one thing I have learned about crystals that I really, really love is you don't have to know them. You just have to know if you need them. And you know if you need them, if they're calling to you, and you can test them. It's called muscle testing, and basically it creates you as a human pendulum. So what you do is you take, this is an amethyst, and you take this and you hold it to your heart chakra, and it's best if you're standing up, and you stand up and you say, "Do I need you?" And if you do, your body will lean in. And if you don't, your body will lean out. And if you're going side to side, that usually means, you can take it or leave it. It's fine if it's here, it's fine if it's not. So don't worry about, oh my gosh, I have to go out and get yellow jasper. Where am I going to find that? If you have crystals at home, go look at your crystals. Do you have a yellow one? That's also the color of the East, is the yellow, right? Because it's where the sun rises, where the first beams of yellow light come in. So look at your yellow crystals, because it might be citrine that is calling to you. And do the muscle testing to see if that's the crystal for you with this new moon intention or with this particular directional spiritual work that you're going to do. Same thing with the South. Red jasper is the recommended one. However, it could be any red crystal if it's meant for you. So you can muscle test that one. Red is also the color of the South. So you could even just have a red piece of something. You can have something that represents that color. And of course, South is all about fire, so that's why it's red, and passion and our drive, that sort of thing. And West is black tourmaline. And so you could take any black crystal or stone or whatever it might be. Black tourmaline is very protective. And I understand why it's in the West, because the West is about the sacred waters and about our emotions. And a lot of times our emotions need to be healed. They need to be protected to keep us level, to not feel those hurts that we have, to not feel the grief as deeply, to be able to move through our grief, through our hurts, through our anger, through our bitterness, whatever it might be. So black tourmaline is very good for that. It's a very great shielding kind of crystal. And then in the North, Hudite, I think I'm saying that right. It's a white crystal. So that's North is white. So think of North, snow, winter. So, and also too, that's the different seasons that are represented by the directions. So East is spring, new beginnings. South is summer. So it's, the time of bounty, when things are growing and days are long. West is autumn, is when we reap what we've sown in spring and summer. And then North is winter, when we rest. It's also represented that on the medicine wheel, that spring is our youth, like when we first come into the world as babies, our birth. South is sort of our teenage years, when we're maturing but we're not quite there yet. West is our adulthood and the decisions we make there. And then North is for the elders and for death as well, because we're all approaching death in one form or another. Now, to go on to the other things that you could call in for the directions, if you want to work with the fairies, for instance. Now, in fairy craft, they actually have a different kind of circle that they cast. It's a 7-pointed star. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to get into if you're calling the 4 directions and you want to work with the fairy folk. So In the east, you're calling the fairies themselves, and you're calling the queen fairy. So there is a queen of all the fairies. She's often known in Celtic history as Mob. So if you hear, that's sort of her nickname. So yeah, you're calling in the queen of fairies, and in the fairy world, it's a matriarchal world. So the fairy queens are the most powerful, and then the kings come in. So it's the queen of fairies that rules all of fairyland that you're calling in, and any other fairies that want to come with her in her entourage. There are different queen fairies as well, but there's Mob, who is the queen of all the fairies. And then in the south, we have the dragons. So you can call in dragon power, dragons to bear witness, to help protect. Nothing like having a dragon in your corner. And then in the west, you're calling in the mermaids, because of course west is about the sacred waters, and mermaids are all about the waters. So you're calling the mermaids, and the mermaids are great to have because they're very good sort of truth checkers. Because even my decks that I have for mermaids, I always warn people when I bring them into a reading, if I'm going to be using the mermaid decks, that the mermaids have a way of being very blunt, and they will tell you, what's wrong, what's going on, call you on your shit kind of thing. And they don't beat around the bush about it, normally speaking. They can be gentle, but they're very blunt even in their gentleness. They just say, this is how it is. They call it like they see it kind of thing. So that's the thing about mermaids. They can be even fiercer than dragons in a lot of ways, because dragons, they'll breathe fire on you, yeah, but the mermaids, they hit hard. But they're always doing it, or at least when you call them into your circle, they're doing it for your highest good. So be aware of that. When you call in fairy energy, you are going to have thoughts of, well, I got to change this and that, and not in a beat up kind of way that we sometimes get stuck in our head where we're not worthy or whatever. Mermaids check us. And it's often a very healthy kind of check to have. And it allows us the space to check our beliefs, our truths about ourselves, and to be able to change that, because we need to bring awareness to it before we can change it. And then in the north, you're calling in either the dwarves or the gnomes, because they're both creatures of the earth. The dwarves are often mining. Dwarves work with dragons a lot because they're often, both of them are sort of protecting treasures and things like that. And the gnomes, of course, are known for being earth creatures. They live in the earth. They have their homes in the earth. There's a famous story about Boulder in, I believe it was Greenland, where they wanted to build a road, and the authorities of, government said, well, we want to build this road right through this rock. We're going to have to move this boulder. And none of the construction people wanted to move it because they knew it belonged to some elves and gnomes. And they said, well, I don't think we should. And then they started anyways, because the powers that be, the transportation department or whatever it was, said, no, we're going to go ahead. But the day they started, none of the equipment would work. Nothing was, going right. Everything was going wrong. And they said, see, we told you, this is why we don't want to do this. So they got permission from the elves that lived and gnomes that lived in that rock to move the rock, as opposed to they were going to blast through it. So they moved the rock, and, a fairyologist like myself came in and, communicated with them and found out, okay, they're willing to move the rock, and here's where they're willing to move it. So the rock got moved in whole to the place that the elves and gnomes agreed to, and then they went back to work on the road, and sure enough, everything went smooth as pie. It was, nothing was breaking down, everything was going right. So you can't mess with the elves, the gnomes, and the fairies, and the dragons. You gotta pay attention to them, and you gotta respect that, because there are like ley lines around the world. There are dragon paths and dragon lines around the world too. And there are people that really believe in that, and that You know, we have to honor those areas, those lines, that sort of thing. And I have to say, being of Irish descent as well as native descent, I have to believe in it. You know, I have to say it's true. Now, for directions, we'll move away from the fairies. But if you want to call in angels, for instance, I love working with angels. So there are 4 angels that are assigned to each direction. And you can call them in if you want to work with angels. So the angel you're calling in the east is Raphael, Archangel Raphael. And he is the master healer on all levels, be it mental, spiritual, physical, emotional, whatever it might be. He is the most available one to us humans. He is here for humanity. That humanity is part of his domain. So if you need an archangel to call on, Archangel Raphael is always there for us. I mean, the other archangels will come in too, but they got stuff to do. They're handling other things. And we also have our guardian angels. So many people neglect our guardian angels. We are given at least one guardian angel in this lifetime that will be with us for all of our lives. And as we progress through this life, sometimes we earn more angels. And we sometimes can have a whole entourage of angels. Meanwhile, we're calling on Archangel Michael to come help us. But you got, 5, 7, 10, 11 guardian angels behind you, and they're going, what are we, chopped liver? So keep that in mind. And sometimes Archangel Michael can't come, so he assigns what we want to our archangels. So, kind of the middleman. Just ask your archangels. They're very powerful too. But for the east direction, we're calling on Archangel Raphael. And like I said, he's the master healer. His domain is humanity, so he's always here for us humans. He does work with the fairies as well when it comes to healing. And he is a demon binder. So because he is a binder kind of angel, that's one of his powers. So healing often requires binding, like bringing together, like when you get cut, the 2 skin parts are coming together. When you break a bone, the 2 bone parts are coming together. So that's why he's a binder and master healer. He's a demon binder. He's also used as a binder for relationships, because of course when you get into a relationship, you're getting bound up with that person, with that other soul. So if you have any relationship problems, Archangel Michael is the angel, or Archangel Raphael, is the angel you want to call on. So he's very good at all those things. Now, in the south, we do have Archangel Michael, because he's the warrior angel, right? He's all about truth, courage, protection, battle. He's aggressive. He'll give you drive. He'll give you aggression in a divine way, not in a, sort of not good way, sometimes human way. But he will give us that grit and that courage should we need those things. And this is the time when you want to call on Archangel Michael if you are in a moment of crisis and you need some courage, you need some strength, you need some protection. Definitely, Archangel Michael's there, kind of thing. And then in the west, we're calling in Archangel Gabriel. So the west, again, is about the sacred waters, the emotions, and emotions require communication. You have a good relationship with anybody, whether it be a spouse, a mother, a father, a sibling, a cousin, a friend, a brother or sister. When you have good communication, you have a good relationship. So Archangel Gabriel is all about communication, because he's the one that's brought most of the messages in the Bible. He's also the one that comes through in dreams. He came to Joseph when Mary was pregnant before being wed. It was Gabriel that came to Joseph and said, don't look at that. Marry her anyways. So Archangel Gabriel is all about communication, understanding, and like I said, Archangel Gabriel tends to work through dreams, and that's the reason the water is associated with him, because water's often associated with things like astral travel and dreams and that sort of thing. And then in the north, we have Uriel. So this is an archangel that's not very well known, because the first three most people know. So Archangel Uriel is the angel of knowledge and wisdom. Archangel Uriel also holds a very special key. It's the key that keeps, or at least this is the legend, it's the key that keeps Satan in hell and unable to come to this plane. And as much as Raphael is a demon binder, Uriel has the key to end all time. And that's the key that she guards and holds safe. She's one of the few female angels as well. Most angels, although most angels, generally speaking, are actually fluid and not really any gender, but they're, Archangel Michael is traditionally portrayed as male. Same thing with Raphael and Gabriel. But Uriel is often portrayed as female, and you don't see, historically speaking, a lot of female angels, although nowadays people tend to draw angels as women as opposed to males, but most of the big angels are males. But she holds the key to end all time, and this is also the thing that keeps Satan, the devil, whatever you want to call him, under lock and key, so to speak. But she is the angel of knowledge and wisdom, and she's not the angel of death, because that's a whole other angel, but she does speak to a lot of that because, of course, her direction is north, which is where death sits. So she's often the archangel that will come when we are dying as well. Not as a grim reaper, that's a whole other thing, but as a guide to coming to the other side. So that's some of the direction sort of things that you can use, whether it's colors, whether it's crystals, whether it's angels or fairies, or you can just call in the directions. Like I said, east is are the keepers of the sacred winds, south are the keepers of the sacred fires, west is the keeper of the sacred waters, and north is the keeper of the sacred earth. So keep that in mind, whichever way you want to go. I hope this helps. And like I said, you don't have to do a whole big thing. You can just say, I call on Archangel Raphael to be at the eastern door to bear witness to what I'm doing and add protection. I call in Archangel Gabriel to be here at the southern door to aid in this work, in this prayer, in whatever you're doing, and provide protection. And you keep going through the angels. You can do the same thing with the fairies. I place the yellow jasper in the east side to act as a protector, because crystals are wisdom keepers. And in shamanic practice, you have what's called the rock people, and crystals fall under that category of rock people. And the rock people are the ones that have been here the longest of anything. They've been here forever. They've witnessed every stage of what Mother Earth has gone through, right from ice ages to world wars to space travel, everything. They've witnessed it all, and they are the wisdom keepers. We try to emulate them in shamanic practice, because as a shaman, you're often a story keeper. So you're keeping the knowledge and history of your people, and that's part of your work as a shaman, so that we can remind ourselves of where we've been and where we're going. So that you can do that work with crystals. Like I said, they are the wisdom keepers, and that's why you're putting yellow jasper in the east, red jasper in the south, or whichever crystal is calling to you. So again, like I said, I hope that helps with your intentions. You'll find it makes them very much stronger, and they'll come in a lot faster. You'll find that you don't have as many blocks. Things are just going smoother. So keep that in mind. And don't forget to know that you're creating a circle of safety, of blessing, of protection. and also let it dissipate afterwards. So thank each direction for being there afterwards. Again, when the Catholics are done a prayer, we do this again. So what we're doing is we're opening up what our intention was, whether Catholics know that or not when they're praying. But when you are done your prayer, your meditation, your journaling, your setting of intentions, whatever it is you're doing, when you acknowledge each of them, and it doesn't really matter what direction you go in, you are then thanking those directions for being here, and you're allowing the intention to go out there in a powerful way. Okay, have a great day. Good luck on all your new moons and on your full moons too. And may you have a very, very happy day. Take care. Bye.